Good afternoon, Lonoke. So glad to see you here this afternoon. I'd like to start with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for this day. Lord, thank you for all of your blessings. Lord, thank you for all the things that you see us through. Lord, thank you for just keeping us safe during this time of uncertainty. I pray for our country. I pray for our world. I pray for the church and our church family. I pray for those who are going through illnesses that are hurting their families, or they're losing loved ones, and it's devastating. Lord, I pray for those who are going through cancer or going through other illnesses by themselves. Lord, I just pray that there's someone there with them. Lord, I'd also like to say thank you for your darling Son, who died for all of our sins. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, good evening on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. It's been a busy week. We've been busy with Southwest District Association. We've been busy with other things that are happening through the week. But we're so glad to see you here this afternoon. A couple of announcements before we start. The first one being, tonight is the final night of the Southwest District Association. We have two speakers. We'll start tonight at 6:30 with the Mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas, the Honorable Frank Scott. And then at 7 p.m. we will have our moderator's address by Reverend Crosley at 7 p.m. We hope to see you there. The service will be on our YouTube channel, and so you'll get a notification of that. And it's also available on the Southwest District Facebook page. Also this evening is Fields of Faith for our youth. The YouTube link is below, and it's youtube.com/Red River FCA. There'll also be these watch parties or house parties at some of the church campuses around town. And on the Arkansas side of town, I know that Mountain Grove is one of those sites. So let's get started. You see my title, it says bait selection. So I want to talk a little bit about bait selection that we think of, but I'm also going to talk about bait selection that Satan talks about. So our verse comes from Joshua 14:8, and here it is. It says, "Nevertheless, my brethren, that went up to me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly follow the Lord my God." So let's talk about fishing. Let's talk about fishing. When I was a kid, we would go fishing. We'd go to the pond or the streams that were out there in the country around Prescott, Arkansas, and we'd catch these small perch, and we'd clean them and we'd fry them every week. But some people, they don't do this with live worms. They have those little fake baits, or they may find some hot dog meat in the refrigerator and head to the pond. When I thought about that, and the writer of our book study said the same thing, similar to that, but he added something to the story. He said they went to Christian camp and they were surrounded by a massive lake, and they took their children. He said his boys couldn't pass up the chance or opportunity to get that big catch, but they weren't having much luck until a man near they saw said we had a sad excuse for bait and offered to exchange it for something better. He had this tiny perch in his hand, and the boys, they just like, wow, fish. They thought it was the final catch. But he took that fish, that little perch, and he put it on the hook. Of course, it was gross, but it thrilled the boys in the story that the author talked about. And when his 11-year-old son was able to throw that rod out there with that perch on it, he caught a 5-pound bass. So a change in his bait changed everything. Wow, what an awesome story. So before we dig in a little deeper, after I finish this evening, Miss Rose Croner is going to come with her story for breast cancer awareness. She's a 20-year survivor. She has an awesome story that this lesson kind of folds right into. The things that make us fear, the things that make us anxious. And so we're going to talk about those too. So I want to talk about bait selection. You know, the enemy tries to choose the right kind of bait to snag you. Sure, he uses some one-size-fits-all tactics because he thinks he can use those. But he also has some that are personalized towards you. And he uses those to calculate your current situations. He uses those to take into account your weaknesses and your strengths, your interests and your tendencies. He looks at your history and your past abuses. He looks at everything, and he crunches the numbers. He starts to utilize this available information, and he crafts a specific strategy to hook you in and take over. So don't believe it, but if you look carefully, you'll notice that the battles your enemies wage against you, especially ones that are very consistent, they have a personality to them. And they imitate knowledge of who you are and the precise pressure points that can take you down. You think this is a random accident? You think it's a lucky guess? I don't think so. These areas are the greatest fears and anxieties in your life right now, and are clues to some of your most important spiritual information. They reveal, among other things, that a personalized strategy has been put in place to destroy and to render defeat upon you. It's been drawn up on a board by someone who knows from experience, the devil, how to best exploit those vulnerable areas in your life. Once you become aware of the enemy's strategy, you begin to see his handiwork beneath the surface. And you'll see it in your most trying circumstances. And you can not only begin to target this culprit, but you can also start seeing some of the intentions and attacks so that you can prepare beforehand. So that gives him little room to make you a casualty of his war. You know, Satan is tricky, but he's not original. And he's not particularly creative. He has a basic game plan. And if you're watching, you'll sometimes see the areas that he's targeting you. Then you'll be ready and you'll expect it. But you have to be proactive in your prayer. You have to be proactive in your prayer line. And you have to put on the armor that we talked about in past lessons. So you'll be able to detect his secret plan before the attack unfolds, and you can sabotage his efforts to deceive and disable you. So I'm not saying that the devil's not a formidable enemy. I'm just saying we give him far too much credit for being impossible to defend against or to defeat. You know, most of this is the reason why he gets the best of us, because we make his job way too easy. So let's try making it a little bit easier on ourselves instead. You know, I believe we can boil down his playbook to just a couple of main attacks, and I'm going to talk about those. We're going to decode those, and you're going to ask yourself a couple of questions. This lesson is going to take me a couple of weeks because I got a lot of points in this one. You know, he tries to hinder you in areas to keep your goals from being accomplished. So think about it. If you're vocal about your faith, he's going to put some fear and anxiety in your life that'll want you to keep your mouth closed. If you have a marriage that's strong, it's a good model for others to see, he'll try to put something between you and your spouse. He's predictable. He wants to cripple you in areas of your life where you're doing the most work, where you're doing the best to hinder God and his church. So let's talk about it. So in what ways do I pose the biggest threat to the enemy and his purpose? You think about that. That's number one. He's trying to get into your marriage. He's trying to get into other things that's going really well. So let's look at the second way he tries to. It says here, what are my flesh tendencies, my innate passions, and what are my weaknesses? You know, every human being has particular taste and interests and passions and curiosities. Some are good and some are bad. Some are sensitive and some are perhaps embarrassing. And we don't want others to know about all those things. And those are the predispositions and your weaknesses that the enemy will seek to exploit. Whether it comes from your upbringing, things that may have happened from events in your life, these appetites for yours inform the enemy's bait selection. He looks at all these things in your past or things that are happening in your life, and that's how he chooses the right bait to target you. And when you combine all this with his knowledge, it's just the right time to tease them out. You know as much about it as he does. And you know that he's about to plan an attack. So a couple of nights, my son and I, oldest son Harrison, we were talking about fear and anxiety. And those are some things that we've been struggling with for a long time. And we have to be specific in our prayer about things that make us anxious and things that we fear. You know, we have to make sure we encourage people who have fear and anxiety. We have to pray that God puts a wall of protection around them, because the enemy will try to exploit them. He's been on it. That's what he wants to do. We have to shout out God's word out loud over those people in our lives who have fear and anxiety. Fear is an opening for Satan to use to cripple my child's heart, your child's heart, your heart. So we always have to watch. Here's another example. Just think, if alcoholism runs your family, the enemy will be seeking to destroy you because it's something sensitive. That's addiction. If any other things have been happening in your life, he will look at those things and try to lead you astray. So we have to keep our eyes close to the areas of great strength, of our greatest strength, and as well as our greatest weaknesses. They are the likely places that you can expect the enemy to target his attack against us. When you know where to look, you can see him coming from a mile away. Like I said, he's not really that clever. He's just cunning. But his number is up with you and me. Be ready, be prayed up, and stand your guard. So I want to just name a few of those things where he tries to go against you. Some areas he tries to go against you in your life. So I'm going to click on a few of these. I'm going to talk about them in depth next week. But the first one I want to just put on the screen is he wants to go against your passions. He seeks to dim your desire for prayer. He wants to dull your interest in spiritual things. And he wants to downplay the potency of your most strategic weapons that you have already. He wants to go against your passion, and we can see those passions in Ephesians 6:10-20. He wants to dull your prayer life. He wants you not to think about spiritual things. So look at Ephesians 6:10-20 when we talk about he wants to go against your passions. He wants to also go against your focus. Let's talk about that focus. He disguises himself and manipulates your perspective so you end up focusing on the wrong culprit. He's directing your weapons on the wrong enemy. In 2 Corinthians 11:14, it talks about the light. He looks right, because he has light on him, because you see light on him. But that will direct you the wrong way if you follow his light. So he wants to go against your focus. He also wants to go against your identity. He magnifies your insecurities. He's leading you to doubt what God says about you and to disregard what he's given you. We'll see that in Ephesians 1:17-19. Wow. He wants to magnify what you're not strong in. He also wants to go against your family. Wow. He wants to go against your family. And if you look at Genesis 3:1-7, you'll see Adam and Eve and the serpent and the battle there. He wants to disintegrate the family. He wants to divide your home. He wants to make it chaotic and restless and unfruitful. Wow. So he wants to go against your family. So he has bait out there that will go against a strong family unit. He also wants to go against your confidence. He will constantly remind you of your past mistakes and your bad choices, hoping to convince you that you're under God's judgment rather than his blood in Revelations 12:10. Check that out. So a lot of things he wants to go against you on. He wants to go against a lot of different things that we're going to talk about next week. But one, I can't go without leaving, or two, I will say two. One, he wants to go against your heart. He uses any opportunity to go against your heart. He wants to remind you of old wounds and keeps them fresh. He, knowing that anger and hurt and bitterness and unforgiveness will continue to roll damage forward. So he wants to just pick at those old wounds that hurt you. So be careful. Watch out for bait in that direction. And the last thing I want to share, he wants to go against your relationships. 1 Timothy 2:8. I will therefore that men pray everywhere, lifting up holy hands without wrath and doubting. That's what we say at church. He wants to create a disruption between man so that we're not holding up holy hands. He wants to have disunity in your circle of friends or your group or your shared community. If you're on the deacon board or you're on another ministry at church, he wants to divide you. So he wants to go against your relationships. So remember, he's cunning, but he's not that creative. He's going to go in trying to attack you in places that you're really good at. And he's also going to try to attack you in places that you're not so good at. But if you pray and read, you will see him coming. Like I said earlier, from a mile away, you will see him. Because he's not that clever, he's just cunning. But his number's up with you and me. So be ready, be prayed up, and stand your guard. I will see you next week while we finish this study on the bait. So I pray that you have a great rest of the week. I hope you get to come to some of the events that we have for this evening. Remember the last night of the Southwest District Association, as well as Field of Faith for our youth. And we'll see you Sunday. And remember, right after I finish this, Miss Rose Crowder is going to share her story on breast cancer awareness, which fits right in this story that we've been talking about the baits, the things out there that will try to hinder you from getting through with God. Thank you. Until next time.
And a lot, I was working, and like I said, I'm a nurse. So my name is Rose Kreiner, and I am a 20-year survivor as of June this year. My journey started when I'm 60 years old, so back during my time, the emphasis was on mostly women to have breast enhancement. That was not the case with me. I was born naturally. Genes. Anyway, I decided that was not what I wanted to be, the enhanced breast lines, so I decided to have a reduction. Well, about a year or so, maybe 2 years after the reduction, I felt a lump. And I asked my doctor to give me a mammogram because I am a nurse, retired now. I asked my doctor, could I get a mammogram to confirm it, because my suspicions all along that it was abnormal. Because I do self-exams. Ladies, that's really important. The mammograms are good, but to have the hands-on touch, to feel examination is the best. And so once we did the mammogram, he confirmed it was maybe cancerous. So we scheduled an appointment, follow-ups, biopsies, confirmed it was breast cancer. At the time, I was like 40 years old. So with me being the age that I was, most doctors being aggressive with you when you're younger to kill the cancer. So I had to go through chemo and radiation. And that's what I decided to do, and that's what he wanted me to do, and that's what I did. At first, I was already prepared in my mind to do a mastectomy, but it seemed like maybe intervention from God to come in and step in, that I didn't have to have a mastectomy. They just did a lumpectomy. For women out there do not know what a lumpectomy is, it's also called a wedge. It's where they remove where the tumor is, and they remove most of the breast tissue, including muscle. They examine the lymph nodes to see how much has escaped from that tumor into the lymph system. So that's what I had instead of a mastectomy. But I still had to go through the chemo and radiation. Once that was started, the process of chemo, the side effects. There's no way around it, ladies. You're going to lose the hair everywhere. You'll be just like a newborn baby, no hair. So I prepared myself for that, and I really adjusted to that, because when I went to my beautician to do my hair after the first chemo treatment, we knew it was time to take the hair out. It was just going to come off. And he asked me, did I want to do it in private? And I said no, because there's nothing to be ashamed of when you got a disease or illness that you're fighting, which cancer occurs in any kind of form of the body. And if you do chemo and if it's doing its job, you're going to have some side effects or something that's going to happen. So I was prepared for it. I said no. So we did the chemo, and the treatment started. I never stopped working, because it's just something that was in me. I don't know if it was natural, if it was God-given or whatever, but I made a promise with God. If he could wake me up every morning and I could put my feet on that floor, I could make it to work. I worked the whole time that I was receiving chemo treatments. I only missed maybe 2 days, and that was at the end of the treatments. But my faith just wouldn't let me sit at home, and I didn't. And during that time, I had a newborn grandson. Hey, I wanted to play with my grandson. So I just decided that I was not going to be in the bed, and I wasn't going to let this overtake me. So I continued to work the whole time, and I worked through radiation too. Now, mind you, most people don't do as good as I did doing it, but my story is not your story. And a lot, I was working, and like I said, I'm a nurse. So we had a chemo department for cancer treatments. And they would come and get me when somebody was down or depressed about what they were going through, they would come and get me to talk to them. And the only thing I could tell them is just look at me. Okay? Your story is not my story, but you don't give up, because healing begins on the inside. A lot of people want to look at that wound or whatever on the outside and judge that about healing, but that's not the case. You look within yourself. That's where healing begins. Your heart is on the inside. It's not sitting on the outside of your chest. So that's what my story is to anybody. Remember, healing begins on the inside, and what you do for cancer or any kind of illness or treatment is for you. Not for anybody else. It's for you. You do it for you. When you feel like you're doing stuff for yourself or making you feel better, you go through a whole lot quicker, without all the downsides, effects that you have, and you survive it. And that's what I did. I came to church. I continued to do activities, knowing I'm putting myself at risk because of my white count, exposed, to anybody coughing or anything. But inside of my head, the faith, that was not my faith. So I kept doing it. Needless to say, 20 years later, you looking at the end product. I walked in every race that they had in Texarkana except for the first one. And you see those ladies and some men that have become survivors, because one day you are a survivor. Not at the end of your treatment. You are a survivor as soon as they tell you have cancer. That's what a lot of people don't realize. You're a survivor from the first day or the first moment they tell you have cancer. And that's what I did. My story, like I said, is different from anybody else. But if I could help somebody, they can talk to me or want to know how I felt, I gladly do it anytime. Because besides the breast cancer, there's other things that I've dealt with. But that's the one that taught me how to survive, and I am a survivor. So if anyone needs that, just to talk and vent, you can call me, because that is something that you really have to deal with. And like I said, the healing begins inside. And people will tell you you're doing good, you're doing great, and all of this, but they really don't know what you're going through and how you're feeling. You can keep that brave face, I did, but to talk to someone that really knows what you're dealing with, that's the best thing that you can understand. And I say again, because I'm coming to the end of this, I'm really not a speaker, but this, if I can bless somebody by looking at me and saying, and like I said, it was 20 years ago when I was 40, so they let you know I'm 60 years old today. Not my birthday, but my age. But yes, I'm 60 years old, and I am a breast cancer survivor for 20 years. Thank you. Hello, my name is Rose Kreiner.